Hello, 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 and welcome to my Be Salty podcast. I am super excited about today's episode. It's definitely going to be it's going to be a good one today. Um, Dating after domestic abuse. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be very heavy, but I am looking for you all to and bear with me just one moment. I'm just trying to get something in here before we get started. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is going to be a very heavy episode. I'm sure this episode, dating after domestic violence, it's near and dear to me. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a domestic violence expert by far. I'm just a woman with a story, right? I'm just a woman who happened to find herself in a situation with falling in love with a man who happened to beat her. And it's an unfortunate situation, but it's a situation that a lot of us experience, especially as women. And we don't always know how to find our way to navigate through these situations. So I definitely think it's a conversation that needs to be had. It's a conversation where we must talk about, what it's like going through domestic violence and then life after, right? Um, I think that we must get involved in this conversation. And so those of you that are tuning in, I'm looking for you to chime in, ask questions, comment, share your thoughts, just get involved. Like, we have to be able to change the narrative of being silent in domestic violence situations. So the guest that I have today has definitely become one of my friends. I believe we bonded a few years back when both of us were kind of going through a tumultuous relationship. And, I guess you could say we kind of trauma bonded a little bit. And so I have her on today, and I'm going to have her introduce herself, Dr. Alyssa Jones. And we're going to go ahead and tackle this conversation and kind of work through it and see if we can help some people get healed and see if we can help some people on the way to getting whole. So, Dr. Alyssa Jones, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me, for even thinking of me to even discuss the topic. But my name is Dr. Alyssa R. Jones. I'm excited because this is a sensitive topic, and I'm an advocate for domestic violence. And never in 1,000 years I would have found myself in a domestic violence relationship, not once, but twice. But I am the founder and CEO of Survivors with Voices Foundation. I host the event Voice Your Invisible Wounds Conference because a lot of times when we're talking about domestic abuse, it starts off emotional and then it escalates to physical. And so, that's a little bit about me. I'm ready to jump into the topic because you've been getting inboxes and I've been getting inboxes that this topic is needed. And so, I'm just excited that people are reaching out to actually be a part of the conversation.
Mhm.
Of course, it's our story, but there's so many other domestic violence survivors out there, whether male or female.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree. And it's unfortunate that a lot of these relationships, a lot of these situations go on for so long because we're so silent about them, because of the humiliation or because of, being looked at a certain type of way. We view ourselves oftentimes as strong women. And then when we find ourselves in situations like this, we feel very weak. When in fact, it's not that we're being weak, we're just trying to. Find that courage to be able to speak out about it. And so, as we tackle this conversation today, again, folks, I'm looking for you to get involved. So let's get started. So one of the things that I do often is I research a lot about, different domestic violence stages and, how we can try to look at situations and be a little proactive on trying not to get into these situations, but also not self-sabotaging ourselves in the midst of it, right? One thing that I noticed in the research is that a lot of times domestic violence situations, they're happening in relationships that are intimate and interpersonal and like long lasting relationships. Like, do you feel like this is true?
I feel like it's very true because them are the people that we trust the most.
Yeah.
And they learn so much about us. I could even speak on my situation. He knew me so much that when we would get in an argument, he would use my vulnerabilities against me.
Mhm.
And so, it is more likely to happen in romantic relationships. But, one of the things that stuck out with me, and one of the things that I had to understand in my own situation, because as I said before, this hasn't only happened to me once, but more than once. And so I had to really take a step back after this last situation and really dive into why did I keep getting into the same situation? And one of the things I learned was we do not unlearn those toxic behaviors that we learn when we get into a domestic relationship. So we are not taught to unlearn those toxic behaviors. So we jump into the same situation because it's familiar. And once a healthy relationship comes along, we're looking at it like it's foreign
Yeah.
because we don't understand it. And so for me, even in my dating situation now, you trying to love me? What you mean? You ain't trying to hit me? What do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not used to that. And so it wasn't until it clicked to me, one of my survivors had inboxed me and they said, Alyssa, everybody celebrates you for getting out of a toxic relationship. But nobody teaches you how to unlearn those toxic behaviors. Nobody really dives into the emotional abuse that it begins with before it becomes physical.
And you know what? That's so pertinent. It's definitely so pertinent. So when I actually was on the other side of it, I went through CBT, some extensive cognitive behavioral therapy, and my therapist actually took me through the different stages of unlearning those behaviors. And she was telling me how detrimental it would be to the success of my future relationships. Like, yes, you had these things happen to you, these things are not you. So how can we start to walk in the steps of being healed? Like how can you start taking these peeling these layers back and starting to unlearn these behaviors? And if you don't do that, it's so detrimental to your future relationships. Like you repeat a cycle, and
You
that
do.
cycle of toxicity or that cycle of trauma becomes your norm.
Right. And actually, you kind of just addressed the question that Mrs. Perry, I want
Yeah.
to say, is a sophomore, asked. I do think that we're drawn to that type of person because if you don't really take the steps to go to therapy and unlearn those toxic behaviors, that's what you're going to attract and what you're going to be drawn to. Now, I would say this in my most recent situation. The emotional abuse didn't happen till the last years of the marriage.
Okay.
And there were certain things that I would pick up, and I'll even throw this out there. The event that I'm planning in October is called Collateral Damage. And as I started going through therapy and really diving in, I realized that I was collateral damage to my circumstances.
Yeah.
I had to go back to that little girl. I was sexually abused at the age of 11. I had daddy issues coming into my relationships. So, because I didn't tackle those situations, I brought that into my relationships, and my ex husband became collateral damage of those circumstances. And see, when you understand that, you can understand to start really breaking down and dissecting where do I need to go back to? I need to go back to that little girl and
Yeah.
tell her it wasn't her fault that she was sexually abused. I need to go back to that little girl and tell her, hey, you know what? You might have not have had a dad the most part of your life, but you had a father figure that loved you. And so you really have to go through and tackle those things to be able to walk into a healthy relationship. And if I knew what I know now, I might even say that I would have loved my ex husband differently. I could take accountability for some of the things that he was lacking. He did try to communicate some things that he was lacking, but it did not warrant him putting his hands on me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, in what you were just saying, your experience is just a little bit different than mine. Because I
Hmm.
was going to go into one of the first stages of domestic violence. Is like the grooming stage. Is where that
Hmm.
person is trying to somewhat seduce you and wow you and really charm you as a person. And so I know you said you didn't experience that because your abuse started late in your marriage. But when I
Hmm.
look back, and my abuse didn't start until probably going into about year 5 or 6.
Hmm.
But when I look back, I can see how those things, the seduction, the charming me, the I feel like putting me on a pedestal and having this idea of me like I was some type of savior or something, he was doing that, right? And so for
Hmm.
me, I'm thinking, okay, this person is just elated to be with me, and this person is just, just very happy and celebrating me as a woman that they've been looking for, right? When in
Right.
fact, this was a part of the grooming process. Like he built me up to um to this
Carry you.
level. And then once he got me to this level,
Hmm.
he went into the second step, and that's to like isolate me. Like, oh, well, you don't need this because you're this person, or we got it together. You don't need not necessarily my family in the beginning, but my friends. You don't really need them. Like we're married now, and we can do this together as a team. It started there, then it began to trickle down to the family, and then when I look back, I can see where my family and I, like, we started to really separate. Like even with my
Hmm.
children, almost,
Oh,
and there
wow.
was a huge separation there. When that happens and that isolation takes place, it's you and it's them.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And when
It
it's
is.
that point of you and them, an abuser will put you in a position to where that control takes over and you're silent.
Hmm.
You're
You are.
silent. You're not looking to go outside of your relationship to discuss things.
Well, and you're absolutely right, because I'll tell you this, and you know me and my ex, I
Mhm.
made it look good on social media. Like you would have never knew that
Mhm.
anything was going on behind closed doors. You would have never knew. I did very, very well with covering him
Yeah.
when it came to that regard. So when things happen and everything hit the fan, when I'm actually putting on social media what happened and him putting his hands on me, everybody's looking like,
Yeah.
no, not
Yeah.
him. He's perfect. You said he was the greatest husband ever. And we paint these pictures of these men, and I said, this, I will never do it again. If
Yeah.
it's not the absolute truth, I won't do it again because I painted this picture so good. I could have been in art school. I painted this picture so good of this man, and I was suffering behind closed doors. And it was only the people that was very close to me. Like it got to the point where if I didn't do something that he liked or we were in an argument, he would reach out to my friends. He would talk about me to my friends. And so it just became so much to where, a GPS tracker was in my car. He was putting stuff on my phone. And it just became like sometimes we feel like that is love, and it's not. So,
Well, you hit a very valid point that I think is vital in discussing, and that's covering, right?
mhm.
There is a certain level of covering that we should do as a spouse, man for
Yes,
woman and woman for man. But when it gets to a point to where someone is doing something that's not only against the marriage but against God, like there's no more covering there. You should definitely take it upon yourself to seek some type of guidance, some type of counseling, some type of counsel, some type of therapy, the police, somebody, because one of the main things that I thought I was doing, as a believer, oh, I need to cover my husband, and I was covering that mess so much so to the point to where I was like starting to blame myself for certain
I do
things.
too. But it's called gaslighting.
Yeah,
That is, gaslighting.
yeah,
And Then you have to think about we went to counseling, but he was so good at convincing the counselors that it was me
Yeah.
that, I started questioning myself and I said, well, is it me? And I started going above and beyond to appease him because I started blaming myself. But
Yeah.
then it got so bad where I started recording conversations
Yeah.
because I'm like, I can't believe he said this to me. And then he'll come back and be like, I didn't say that. So it got to the point where I just started recording conversations and then I would send the conversations to my friend because
Hmm.
it's like, am I tripping? No, he did say that. And he would literally come back and say, I didn't say that. And even going through the divorce was worse than the actual itself. Like, it was abuse all over again because my divorce was very public. It was very nasty. And it was just like, you know what, God, how do you bounce back from that? And I don't know if anybody out there can actually relate, but it hurts your heart to walk away from somebody that you still love. To know that, you know what, this is what I need to do for my sanity, and I have to love myself, but I still loved him when I walked away. And I started thinking about the good times we had. I started thinking about when we first got together, about, all the things that I did and we did that we were happy. And I tried to outweigh the bad, but the bad became so bad and so much to where at the point of you putting your hands on me in front of my daughter, I had to make a decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say same. People don't understand, right? And especially if you haven't been in that position. And one
Hmm.
of the most, I would say, disturbing questions that is going to give you probably one of the most disturbing answers is for someone to say, "Well, why didn't you leave? Well, why
Well,
didn't you get out? Well, why
and
did you stay?"
I'm gonna tell you the crazy part. I was doing the work. At that time, I was an advocate still for domestic violence. I was doing all these events, I was doing all these conferences, and he was standing right beside me. I was doing the work. And when it happened, I had to step back and say, I encourage thousands of women to leave their abusive spouses. And here I am in the same exact situation. Why didn't I leave? Because he isolated me financially. At that time, I had just became a flight attendant. And I remember to this day when I became a flight attendant and I talked to him about it. I was excited about it, and he said, yeah, I'll support you. Go ahead. I go through being a flight attendant, and you already know I get based in Minneapolis. And so here we go, crash pad. I got all these bills. Now, mind you, I was a loan officer. He was a realtor. We both were making six figures. He was upset because I was no longer going to be making six figures, and a lot of the responsibility was going to fall on him. But he told me he had me. So after I go, I remember I was sitting in my crash pad and my crash pad was due, my car payment was due, and for the first 30 days, we don't get nothing. And I remember I called my dad, God rest his soul. I called him and I was crying because here I am, I have this husband that makes six figures, but he doesn't want to help me because he didn't want me to become a flight attendant in the first place. So I'm talking to my dad, and I still have a copy of the check today. He sent me some money. And he said these words to me: there's no way I should be sending you money and you got a Negro laying next to you. Period. So, long story short, I go through, the struggles of being a flight attendant, and I tried to compensate by, his birthday came along, I took him to Paris. I tried to show him the benefits of this job. We get down to, I'm 3 years in, we're going to counseling, and I remember the counselor specifically asked him, well, is this payback to your wife? And If you didn't want her to be a flight attendant, why did you tell her, it was okay for her to do it? He looked at that counselor and he said, because I didn't think she was going to get the job.
Oh my God, girl. That is my exact same story.
He said, I did not think she was going to get the job. And here I am overcompensating, trying to plan these trips, take him on trips, and do all of these things to show him it's a benefit if you just support me.
Yeah.
And I struggled to be where I am in my career today. So when people see me out there and I'm in the friendly skies and I'm enjoying it because I fought for my seniority and I fought to stick with it when he didn't believe in me. And so it's crazy to hear that your spouse didn't root for you in that season. And what I learned in that season is he was really passive aggressive. And I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea what that meant to be passive aggressive. But when I look back on it, it was a lot of that. And I had to really hustle. Even going through the divorce, financially, I had to struggle to pay for an attorney because he fought me. Um, and it was crazy. But I will say this: through it all, Kendra, God kept me. And now, as I sit here and I'm thinking about it and I'm talking about it, I did not want for anything, even with losing his income. God has kept me.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because I remember him doing this big old huge social media post talking about, I asked for spousal support and I wasn't going to get a penny and, all of that good stuff. The macho stuff that, men post. And at the end of that divorce proceeding, God vindicated me. I not only got spousal support, he had to pay my attorney fees. God vindicated me. And it was so many things that was said, at that time, I had been, he had put me through the mud and, he started seeing somebody that was close to us in our circle. They started putting me in the mud on social media. But I will say that I walked away vindicated by God.
And that's really an amazing testimony because that's not everybody's what I feel like if you're able to walk away, that is everybody's story. However,
Right.
they may not view or receive God's hand on their life, coming out of a situation like that. I know that's my story. I definitely know that God is the only reason, that
Right.
I'm still going up.
Yeah,
When you
yeah.
think of the scripture that says, "Count it all joy when you fall into various trials," you think to yourself like, "How can I count this all joy?"
Hmm.
But when
Hmm.
you look at how God has His hand on your life through each and every situation, like I could have died, I
Yeah.
could have lost my life more than once. God was able to step in the midst of whatever physical situations and give some sort of self control,
Right.
to
Right.
stop things from escalating to a point to where my life was lost. But
Hmm.
there was a time when people would ask me like, why didn't you leave, like you could have just left, and I really couldn't answer the question like why I didn't leave, because I felt stupid, because I felt like I still love this man, like the same
Hmm.
man that
And
has.
we want it to work. We don't want it to fail. And it was so crazy because I struggled leaving for 3 years, and I would go back and forth and back and forth, and a lot of it for me was financial because I kept asking myself, how can I stand on my own 2 feet without his help? But then when I looked at it, he really wasn't helping me. There was times I rem- he didn't even pay our mortgage for a year because he it was a mess. I remember I had to do a loan modification. So when people ask why didn't you leave, a lot of it is financial. A lot of it is you have that hope for change. Like I
That's
really
one
thought
of the reasons why people
he was
don't.
going to change. He kept telling me, "I'm sorry. It'd be good. We'd be good for about 2 months. he go right back doing the same thing again. And I really believed that he was going to change. And
Well,
so, and I'll even say this, there was a time where I was bitter. There was a time when we first, was separated. I was angry. I was upset. But now I can honestly say that I'm happy. He's found his happiness with someone else, and I can honestly sit here and say I'm happy for him because I'm at peace. And I never thought I would get to that place to say that I'm at peace. And so we're talking about dating after domestic abuse. It's so crazy when you get at peace. Your type of man and the taste of men that you were used to is not even your taste anymore. And I don't know what's in this dating pool, but baby, this peace and joy I have is not disturbable. And I'll also say this because I just had a gentleman ask me the other day. He asked me why have I been single for so long, and I had to specifically tell him, Kendra, I haven't met a man I'm ready to give up my singleness for.
you haven't met a man you ready to give up what for?
My singleness.
Oh,
I haven't met a man I'm ready to give up my singleness for.
yeah.
Um, and until that day comes, I'm happy where I'm at. I feel like I don't have to rush to be in competition to get into a relationship because that's what my ex has chosen to do. I'm okay with where I'm at in my life. I worked hard to get here because I had to go back and rework and unlearn some of those behaviors so I could even be presentable to a man. Because ain't no man gonna take all of that, what I was coming from, and that baggage and that bull. Like, I'm not even gonna ask him to. He's not gonna take that. And one of the things I had to understand, even with listening to some of the men, a lot of times we go through this dating phase, and a lot of us women will say us, not understanding men got wants and needs too. And I had to understand that in this season, because baby, it was all about me.
Well, I think that when you come out of an abusive when you come out of a relationship, period, but
Hmm.
especially when you come out of an abusive relationship, there's a certain level of compassion and comfort that you're looking for when you are transitioning, into new relationships, even friendships. Because I know
Yeah.
I look for my friends to kind of help me in this period of time. Like I needed so much reassurance because I feel like I was torn down. Like my abuse was not just physical abuse. My abuse was spiritual abuse. It was emotional abuse. It was mental abuse. It was all working together, and I felt like that I had been taken to a place to where my self esteem was at an all time low. I
Hmm.
like I was super insecure about my physical.
Yeah.
I did not think that anybody would want me.
Mm.
I did not think that I was worthy. I felt like that I was not valuable. And if I can really be honest with you, I was married to a pastor, and yet at the same time did not see my worth in what he had. I felt like I had prioritized this husband of mine over God, right? Now, I don't know if people want to
Mm.
be
That's
real
deep.
about that, but that was real. That was where I was in that space. It was that man, and then it was God, and then it was everything else. And I don't know if people realize when you idolize something over God gonna test that thing. And he gonna test that thing like never before. And I'm telling you right now,
Absolutely.
God ain't losing. God is not
Yeah.
losing. So although
Yeah.
we may think that, we're not gonna give this man up, but God will make it where you so uncomfortable, where you so hurt, where you so much in distress, where you have no choice but to walk away from that thing. And that's where I was. It wasn't something I did voluntarily. I didn't walk away from this
Right.
man who was beating me voluntarily. I walked away from that situation because God was like, I'm taking you out of this situation. And
And
that's
they
exactly
say,
where I was in that moment. And when he took me out of that situation, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of I tarried in it for a while, right? I
me too.
from the relationship, but I still was talking on the phone. I still was messaging. I still was seeing him from time to time. And it's like God was like, no. Like when I'm separating this, I'm separating this. Like I'm gonna take control right now. And I had to be in full surrender at that moment because I was crying out and asking God to take me out of a situation that He's showing me. I'm taking you out of it, but yet you're holding on to it. And so that wrestle is kind of where I was. And it's kind of like it takes me to that place. And I know I'm not trying to be super spiritual here, but it
You
takes me to that
okay?
place
You
to where
okay?
Jesus said, that cup. Take that cup
Yeah.
from me. If not my will, your will. Like I was right there in that moment. Like God, take it from me because Lord knows, like I don't want to be in this situation. But at the same time, I love this man and I'm devoting my
Yes.
life to this man and I'm
Hmm.
trying to make it work. And I know that he'll change because you say that all we have to do is pray without ceasing. And as long as we're operating and walking in your will, like you're gonna go before us and make the crooked places straight. And I'm telling you, I'm out here and I'm laying it down. Do you hear me?
You
I'm
you
I'm
and me
praying
both.
like the prayer warrior that I am.
Hmm.
Like I still was faced with the fact that God was like, no, no. Well,
Yeah.
anytime you put something
And that's
above
how
me,
I
I'm
sit
gonna take
there.
that thing right about your life.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
nobody that God that saved me in that situation. So when people ask me like, why didn't I leave? It's because I feel like that I was in a situation where I was being led by the enemy. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
wasn't being
Yeah.
led by God. I wasn't being led by the Spirit of God because I had allowed my whole spiritual life to be tainted by manipulation and to be
Hmm.
tainted by I want to say ungodly counseling. And so now that God removed that thing from me, He then started orchestrating things where He started putting people in place, and He started putting messages in my ear. Right? He started putting the right words coming out of my mouth. So when they say count it all joy when you fall into various trials, like I thank God I went through that because God
Yeah.
used me in that season and this one, right? To be
Hmm.
able
Hmm.
to share my message or my testimony or my mess, whatever you want to call it, with
Right.
women today
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
able to not only relate to them, but be able to tell them, like, no, sis, like, you're going to come out on the other side of that. Like, you are going
Right.
to overcome from the power of this testimony. I don't care if I'm about to walk this thing out with you because by no means are we supposed to be in these type of situations. This is not the
Right.
life that God has for us. So if it's not anything that I can give to anybody who has been in a domestic violence relationship or who may even be in one. Let me say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Silence, isolation, those are the works of the enemy.
Absolutely.
That's the work of the devil. Like find yourself in a situation to where you can get enough courage to tell somebody. I don't know who that might be. If it might be me, maybe Dr. Alyssa. You can message either one of us. If you can reach out to a sister friend, a family member, someone who will be able to help you, like in this season, because silence will break you.
And this is the thing too, and as I was listening to you speak, a lot of times what people don't understand, I lost a lot of friends in that
Oh
season.
yeah,
People that I thought were my friends when I went through my divorce, it's so crazy that people choose sides. And during that season, you learn who is for you and who's not for
oh yeah,
you.
oh
And
yeah,
I went through a season of really having to be by myself.
yeah,
And as I listened to you talk, it was almost like you had to detox.
yeah, oh
I
yeah,
really had to detox because I was used to being with him every day. Me and my ex was together every day. And
mm,
so I had to go through a detox process. There even became a time where, I was like, well, dang, I need to go back and get my husband. But I had to really think about everything that I had been through. And this, I had finally got on my feet. I had finally got to a place where I was seeing a rainbow. And so it's like, why would you want to go back to that? Why go back to where I saved you from? And so I'm trusting and believing that God got somebody out there for me. But even if He don't, I'm okay with that too. Because I think,
I'm here to tell you today that when you think of a domestic violence relationship, I'm going to equate that thing like an addiction, right?
yeah,
You know, this thing right here might kill me, but I can't stop. I can't stop. Like I cannot let that thing go. And now, y'all, my addiction, my Lord, my addiction was Welch's fruit snacks, but I have been delivered. I have been delivered. But
yeah.
but
And
like
then I think what's important too. A lot of times we talk about self love,
yeah.
and I had to get to that point. And I also had to understand it's okay to sit in your singleness.
Oh yeah.
That's what people don't understand because you get so lonely, you entertain anybody. And once I got to the point where I was sitting in my singleness and I wasn't lonely, baby, listen, you can't bring me anybody. You can't bring me anybody. I'm not entertaining anybody. Like, you probably laugh at me, but those messages I post on social media be real life, and I'll be like, God, I know this is not what you had for me. Hooked on
Yeah.
Ebon talking about hundreds. Like,
So then post, divorce, post domestic abuse. Now you got it in your spirit, I need to unlearn these behaviors. So then you
mhm,
out here in the dating scene, like what do
we
you
need a new guy
do
to
so that
win.
you don't find yourself sabotaging?
Um, can you repeat the question?
So there's trauma, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
go through trauma, and granted, we work through the trauma, and it doesn't all just go away, right?
Right, right, right.
So how do you find yourself not self-sabotaging yourself when you're out here dating, and just automatically giving a red flag because somebody may have the wrong tone or the wrong body language or something like that? Like, how do you find yourself preventing yourself from self-sabotaging?
I had to stop being so transparent. Um, One of the things I learned in dating is when I talk about the domestic violence and I talk about things I've been through, it literally scares a man. And I had to learn not to talk about exes. I had to learn how not to talk about, the things that I've been through. Because once we even get to a point of exclusivity,
Hmm.
I need to be able to be vulnerable. When
Yeah.
I can be vulnerable with you, then I'll share that. But because I was so transparent when I first started dating and so open, and then at the time too, I was still going through my divorce proceedings because my divorce proceedings took a couple years. And
Hmm.
so, going through all of that and just being transparent, I scared off a lot of men.
Yeah.
And so now I'm very intentional about understanding what his intentions are and making sure that they align with mine. If they do not align with mine, then I don't even waste my time.
Yeah.
But when there's certain questions that some men will ask, well, what happened with you and your ex, or why are you single? Why you been single so long? X, Y, Z. I really try to give cookie cutter responses because it opens the door to more than
Yeah.
what they need to know with trying to get to know me. Like, I am not my past. So get to know me, my personality, and who I am, and fall in love with that person before you decide to understand where I come from, what my past is. Because I'm looking for you to be different. I'm looking for you to be different, and I shouldn't have to tell you the blueprint of the man that I'm looking for. I shouldn't have to tell you how to treat me. I shouldn't tell you how to court me. I shouldn't tell you how to pursue me. Because a lot of times when men ask, "Well, what you looking for?" and we tell them, and that's exactly what they pretend to be for the first couple of months. So even going through all of that, I had to learn not to be so transparent and if they align with what mine is because I don't have time to waste.
That's good.
I
That's
don't
good. So do
have
you
to
feel
spend
like
my life.
So do you feel like do what I guess is there anything that you expect like your new partner once you have gotten to the point to where you are dating someone and you say, okay, I see this going somewhere. Um, do you expect for your new partner to accommodate you in somehow in regards to your past?
No, because that's my stuff.
Okay.
There's no accommodations that he should have to have for my past. The
Hmm.
only thing I ask is that he understand it. If you can't understand it, then what are we doing? But I've done the work. So there's nothing that you have to do to accommodate me because I'm already whole. I
Yeah.
did the work. There's nothing that you have to worry about. Now, if you raise your fist, then it might be a trigger. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, there's no accommodations because if you create that space for me to be vulnerable with you, then
Yeah.
you're going to get all of me anyway.
Yeah.
And it was a promise that I said. There was an exercise that my therapist had me do, and it was just really listing out everything that I had to work on and everything that I needed to purge within me to move forward into a healthy relationship. So it took me back to the moment of saying that I will not allow a man to pay for any mistakes in my past that another man has caused. So when I walk into this new season of a relationship, he's going to get the best of me. And it takes me back to that song by Anthony Hamilton. I'm giving you the best of me because he doesn't deserve anything less than that.
That's good. That's really good stuff. Like that's the other side of healing. A lot
Hmm.
of times, people don't take that time to detox and get to that space of where they can walk into a new situation, completely whole because it's so necessary. You're going into a situation where you're expecting the person that you're dating to give you, 100% them, and yet you're coming with a hope with some of you and some of somebody else and what they did to you, and
Right.
so that's like one of the main, I feel like, factors that kill relationships is unhealthy people walking into a new relationship. And a lot of times, you're unhealthy, you're going to damage somebody else in a new relationship.
And this is the thing I had to understand too. And I've done a lot of work. I had to get the bitterness out my heart,
Yeah.
from my ex.
Yeah. Yeah.
I blamed him for a lot of things, but I also had to stand up and be accountable for my part I played in it. I played a part in it as well. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I got a sense of forgiveness and I can sit up here and say I'm happy for him in his new situation because he deserves happiness, right, wrong, or indifferent,
Mhm.
regardless of how we ended or, what we've been through, he deserves to be happy.
Yeah.
And once I could sit here and allow myself to be happy for him, because there was another bitterness a part of me was because of the person he ended up with. But then I had to check myself because at the end of the day, we don't own nobody.
Mm-mm.
We all belong to God. So if that's who He chose and that's who His happiness is, then I'm all for it. And it wasn't until I got that peace in my heart that I started seeing a different life for me, and I
Yeah.
started being able to enjoy a peace and a level that I've never gotten to before in my life. And it's sad that finding me lost us, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm important and
Yeah.
I deserve to be happy. And so, yeah, you have to get the bitterness, anything that you have with your abusers out your heart. And once you do that, it's a totally different door that opens for you and a totally different life.
Absolutely. I've heard you speak about peace like several times throughout this conversation, and that's something I really wanted to attack and capitalize on because I hear people talk so much about peace. Oh, I got peace.
Mhm.
I got peace, but your peace is only up until somebody call you and say something, and then your peace is out the window, or your peace
Right,
is only, it's movable, movable
right, right,
peace.
right,
It's
right, right.
movable peace is not peace. That's
Hmm.
something that's sustaining you for that moment. Like I think when we dig deep and we really understand that, first of all, we must forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
Because I struggled with that for a while. Like, God,
Mm.
how did I allow myself? That's what my struggle was. How did I allow myself to stay in this so long, or how did I allow myself to go through this, or there was a huge part that I wrestled with. So once I was able to forgive myself, then I was able to forgive this person, and then
Right.
I was able to focus on, okay, God also forgives me, and He gave me that perfect peace, that peace that is unmovable, like that peace that surpasses all understanding, right? So it didn't matter
Hmm.
Paul saying what, right? At the
Right.
end of the day, like I still was gonna have that peace, and that peace that you're talking about is like it's nothing like it.
Right. Right.
It's nothing like it. And so when you're saying like that, you could say like I'm happy for him, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
That comes from a place of unmovable peace. That comes from a place of
Yeah.
I don't care who you with. You know what I'm saying? That comes
Yeah.
from a place I don't care if you hit the lotto.
Right.
I'm
Now
still
wait a
peace.
minute. No.
Peace not continue. You say wait.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The lotto. Wait a minute.
No, because
But no.
at the end of the day, if somebody hit the lotto and you backtrack into a situation, there's still a level of control that's going to be there. It's going to be monetary control, and then that piece that you're speaking of, again, it's gone.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that can I say I was with somebody for 13 years and love them and not be happy for them? It's such a thin line between
Yeah,
love and hate when people
yeah,
are married and divorced. And that was one of the things that my therapist really had to drill into me. You loved this man for 13 years, and now you're not happy for him, regardless of who he is. And I had to sit there in my boo boo. You know what I'm saying? Like I had to sit there in my stuff, like, and really be like, you know what? Because it's a thin line between love and hate, and a lot of times when we go through divorce, you never see them end on a good note. And our divorce was nasty. And when she made me sit in that, I said, I can't say I loved this man for 13 years of my life. And actually, probably longer than that because we went to middle school and high school together. So when we reconnected after 10 years of being disconnected and we got back together, that love doesn't go away.
right.
And so to sit up here and say, I hope his new marriage fails or I hope his relationship fails, I can't sit up here and honestly say I love that man and
Yeah,
not be happy in the season that he is in. If he is happy and that's the person he chooses to be happy with, I have no right on this earth to say that he can't be happy with
yeah.
no matter who it's with. And we get that confused so much because we want to control who they end up with. We want to see karma hit so bad because he put his hands on me. He deserves to suffer. Nah,
That's laying in pain. That's what
you
that is.
know what I
That's
mean?
laying in pain. I'm too focused on me trying to be happy.
Now there was a time where I was Medea. I'm coming for you. But I think in this season of my life, and it's so many things and I think I can attribute to losing both of my parents. When I lost my parents, it kind of did something to me, and it made me look at life different. And so, no matter who you end up with, you have to enjoy life.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't matter, if that's his happiness, fine. My happiness is in this season, and I'm gonna enjoy it. If being in Jamaica is my happiness, I'm gonna enjoy
That's good
it.
stuff. That's good stuff. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's happiness, right? Just
Mhm.
because I went through something like this, don't mean I'm not gonna have happiness. And
That part.
I agree with the person who just commented, healing looks real good on you. You know what I
Oh,
mean? And
thank
so I'm
you. Yeah, I
happy.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you're in this space because, listen, I know what it looks like.
Yeah, yeah, you know, and I'll even say this. You've been there behind closed doors. You've been in my life where it was bad for me.
Yeah,
So to be at this place now, sometimes people say, I want to rewrite history. I don't want to rewrite anything in my life because it's what made me who I am.
yeah,
if I feel like if I would have took any different steps, because there was times I questioned, should I got a divorce? Should I walked away? It was so crazy. I was at an event in Atlanta not long ago, and I was listening to some of the couples there talking about, they have been married for 16 years and, things like that. And I don't know if you have done this, but, when that anniversary comes around, you'll be like, oh, it would have been 16 years if I stayed married. So, you have those moments and it's okay because you're human.
Yeah.
And I can remember I lost some friends in the season. I talk about that because I was on social media lashing out. I was on social media. They would make a post. I'm responding. They would respond. You know what I mean? And here I am. And it became petty, and I lost a lot of people because they didn't see that side of me. And I had to do a social media post
Yeah.
saying I'm human. At the end of the day, I got feelings. I'm human. I
Yeah.
love this man. He was a part of my life for more than 13 years because we went to middle school and high school together. So, excuse me if I'm hurting. But some people don't want you to hurt. Some people don't want you to voice your pain.
Yeah.
And, that's really how I birthed Voice Your Invisible Wounds Conference because we go through and we have these invisible wounds that we don't talk about and we don't share. And it takes your voice and my voice to be able to unlock somebody else's voice.
Yeah,
What
there was
happened
a
to
long
my
season for me where I did not speak about this at all.
hmm
My reasoning was more so because we were the leaders of a church, we were the leaders of a ministry, and so I knew that we had a lot of people that were new to the faith, and
Yes.
so I did not want them to be lost because
hmm
of, oftentimes people put pastors and pastors' wives on this pedestal and they kind of put them on the same level as God. And so if this pastor or this
Yes.
pastor wife let you down, then in some type of way God let you down, which that's not the case.
hmm
I can understand why one may
Right.
think that, especially being new to the faith. So
Right.
it's like I was carrying the members on my shoulders, right? I was
You
putting
are. Yeah.
before my own personal wants and desires. And so I didn't speak of it. I didn't want
Yeah.
him to be like destroyed by, what I said, even though it
And
was
that's not
true.
covering.
And
You
so,
covered him.
huh?
You covered him.
Yeah, and even after we got divorced, like I still didn't say anything. Like I even went on social media and was like,
Um,
please,
I'm a witness because when I reached out to you, I didn't even know.
yeah, I was just like, please give us this space to deal with this alone because
I
I
didn't
felt
even
like
see
I
that.
still, but that's my character. So up until this point, it took somebody to tell me, this is your story as well.
Right.
It has nothing to do with him. This has
And
everything to do with you.
it's funny you say that because I remember when I started sharing, um, somebody said this to me and it stuck with me. If people wanted you to share warmly about them, they would have been careful about how they
Yeah,
treated you.
yeah,
They have no right to tell you
yeah,
about what your story is.
yeah,
If they wanted you to write or even speak warmly about them, they would have been careful in the way they handled you.
yeah. So for me, when I did start speaking, I did feel a way about it because for me, it wasn't vindictive, it wasn't revenge, it was my story
No, this is my truth. Yeah.
through and through. So
Hmm.
that's it, and that's all.
Yeah.
I definitely thank you for taking the opportunity, taking the time out your day, and sharing, your story and sharing your experiences because, I feel like we need to do more of this. Like we normalize
Yeah, we do.
toxicity, we normalize, being destructive, but we don't
Mhm.
normalize, coming out of something. We don't
Yeah.
normalize overcome, and then we definitely don't normalize when we come out of it being happy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
the detriment, the bitter,
Yeah.
what they call it? The bitter,
Betty, bitter Betty. I
bitter
don't
black
know.
woman, the bitter whoever. Okay, bitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
We haven't come out of this bitter. We've come out of this better. And so I'm
Yeah.
really
Absolutely.
that you took time out your day to have this conversation with me. Did you have anything you wanted to share or tell about the upcoming event as well? I know you'll be able to share the flyer, but
Oh yeah, so I am planning an event in October. It is called Voice Your Invisible Wounds Conference in 2023. After I went through my divorce, I took a short hiatus because I would just be honest and transparent. I felt like a hypocrite. I felt like I was in it, and how can I help these women of domestic violence? And I'm going through it. And so I've been on hiatus for about 4 years. So this is our comeback. We're excited about it. And the theme is collateral damage, divorcing your dysfunction. One of the things I want to do and help survivors do is dig deep in the emotional abuse. We always talk about the physical, but we never talk about the emotional abuse that comes with the physical. And we're going to help you divorce your dysfunction. And so it's going to be in Houston, Texas, October 13th and 14th. And I'm excited because Kendra has agreed to be one of my speakers. And it's going to be a powerful event. She's been a part of my events before, so she know when I bring it, and we're going to impact some lives. We're going to help you divorce your dysfunction and not become collateral damage to anybody's circumstances moving forward.
That's so good. I'm so excited. I'm really excited about that event. So, y'all, we will have flyers coming soon so you can tap in and get
Hmm.
tickets. And until then, I'm looking for y'all to join me for I have an event coming up, which is my live podcast. That's July 29th. You can get your tickets now. There is a link that will be dropped in the comment section, but there is also a link on YouTube. There's also a link on Instagram, which is underscore be salty underscore. There's a link in the Facebook, which is be salty. And I'm looking for y'all to come out. Like at the live podcast is an opportunity for us to have some conversations. Like no topic is off the table. Like listen, you went through it, we talking about it. You haven't gone through it, we talking about it, right? And so I'm looking for y'all to come out, support me in this event. This is my 1 year anniversary. So
Yay.
after the live podcast, we're gonna do like a little celebrate. We're gonna have a party. So
Okay.
food is included in this event. I'm saying invite, invite, invite. Get your tickets now. There is an early bird special. Yeah, so I'm excited about that. And until then, as I always say, be salty.